Mobil didn't invent synthetic oil. It wasn't even first. That badge belongs to a man in Wisconsin, and Mobil took 2 more years to get its own version on a shelf, 4 to get it nationwide. One company spent its money on advertising, the other spent it on the oil. None of this means you've been careless, but you've never checked the one thing you always assumed was true. Pull the dipstick and the color comes back darker, sooner than it used to. There's a half-second more tick on a cold start than there was a few winters back. You've started topping off a quart between changes on a car that never used to drink a drop. That was not your imagination. That was a formula that stopped needing to earn the name on the bottle, because the name was already selling it for them. I check 3 things before I trust any oil: the certification stamped on the back, the base stock, and who actually formulated it, not the logo. Here are 9 brands that pass all 3, in order of how uncomfortable they should make you. Number 9 sits on the bottom shelf, in a plain bottle most guys walk straight past. Idemitsu started in Japan in 1911 selling lubricant to fishing boats before it ever touched a car engine. When Honda needed a thinner oil to squeeze more range out of a hybrid, Idemitsu built the 0W20 blend years before anyone else had one. It's factory filled into Toyotas, Hondas, and Nissans off the line, and it's one of the few oils to earn GM's Dexos 1 approval on its first submission. A 5-quart jug runs cheaper than mid-shelf Mobil 1. Do the actual math over 3 years of oil changes, and you've saved most of a tank of gas, for a formula built to your exact engine's tolerances, instead of one trying to cover every engine on the road at once. Go look at your own dash tonight. That oil life number was never wrong. It just never told you which oil actually earned it. The yellow bottle never had to earn its badge either. This one still does, every single batch. If this is already making you look at your own garage shelf differently, hit subscribe now, because it only gets more uncomfortable for the yellow bottle from here. Number 8 gets laughed at before anyone even opens the cap, because it's purple. Grape soda purple, sitting in a sea of amber bottles like it wandered in from the wrong aisle. A chemist named John Williams built the company in Texas in 1986 around one actual piece of chemistry, an additive called Cinerlec that bonds to metal at the molecular level instead of just coating over it. Most oil sits as a film between 2 surfaces. Cinerlec smooths the metal itself, so there's less roughness for that film to fight in the first place. Royal Purple's own published data puts the film strength at 3 to 4 times a comparable oil without it, and it carries a full API and ILSAC license, not just a claim on a bottle. I'll be straight with you. The color is pure marketing. It doesn't need to be purple to work, and Williams never pretended otherwise. You'll pay closer to race shop prices for the privilege. A guy who's rebuilt his own small block knows the difference between an oil that coats metal and one that actually bonds to it. That's not a color, that's a decade of no dry start knock. It was never about the color of the bottle, it's about what's actually bonded to your metal. Here's the pivot in this whole argument, because up to now you might think this is just about which company runs the better commercial. It isn't. Liqui Moly doesn't run American ads. It doesn't sponsor your favorite team. German drivers have voted it their own country's #1 oil brand year after year, and they have no reason to lie about it. Number 7 started in Ulm in 1957 around one additive, liquid molybdenum disulfide, the same compound that let fighter pilots keep flying on a punctured oil tank because it kept lubricating metal after the oil itself had drained out. Rub a drop between 2 fingers and it goes slick almost instantly, the metal bonding doing its job before any actual oil surrounds it. That's not a marketing story, that's a property you can look up tonight. It still formulates specific blends certified to BMW and Volkswagen's own factory specs, manufactured only in Germany, nowhere cheaper. It runs close to what you already pay for Mobil 1, sometimes less, for a formula built to a stricter certification than the one currently in your engine. A guy who's driven the same diesel wagon past 280,000 miles without adding a drop between changes isn't loyal to a country. He's loyal to a number on a spec sheet. Some companies never needed you to know their name to earn your trust. The next one lives somewhere your commute never will. Number 6 lives in racing, where nobody can afford to be sentimental about a name because a bad oil choice ends your engine and your race in the same lap. Redline started in 1979 in a garage in Novato, California, built by racers who needed something good enough for 10,000 RPM held for hours at a stretch. Most synthetics, even the good ones, use a base built from processed petroleum called PAO. Redline builds its high-performance line from ester instead, the same base category used in jet turbines, because ester molecules cling harder to metal as heat climbs instead of thinning and slipping like most oils do. It's also fully approved for GM's Dexos 1 spec, so it isn't just a track product playing dress-up on a street shelf. Here's the math that actually matters. A quart costs a few dollars more than Mobil 1. For a daily commute, that gap barely registers over a year. For an engine towing a trailer through mountain grades every weekend, that same small gap is the entire difference between a clean bottom end at 200,000 miles and a rebuild at 140,000. You don't drive on a label. You drive on whatever survives the heat. The next one is the one that changes how you see everything else on this list. Number 5. Motul is a French company, and back in 1971, a year before Amsoil's American breakthrough, it built something no one had sold in Europe before. A motor oil that was 100% synthetic all the way through. No petroleum base hiding under the label. Every full synthetic on a shelf today, Mobil 1 included, exists downstream of that one formula. Here's the moment that actually matters to you. Walk into any shop that rebuilds engines for a living, any bay where the guy wrenching has nothing to gain from which brand you believe in, and look at what's sitting on his own shelf. It shows up constantly, not from a sponsorship check, because the people who see burned pistons and scored bearings up close every single week buy their own oil with their own money, long before any camera ever pointed at them. Mercedes, Ferrari, and BMW all factory recommend it for exactly that reason. It costs more per quart than Mobil 1, priced closer to what a track team pays than what a commuter expects to. That's the actual cost of an oil built by people with nothing left to prove and everything to lose from choosing wrong. Here's the whole quiet secret under this list. Professionals were never loyal to a name. They're loyal to what survives a teardown. Go grab whatever bottle is sitting in your own garage right now and flip it over. Find the API donut stamped on the back, the little circle with 2 letters inside it. That code is the actual proof. Everything else on the label is a story somebody paid to tell you. I don't sell what I don't run myself, one retired engine builder told me once. 30 years into running Motul in everything he's owned. That was never your imagination either. Number 4 is where it gets uncomfortable for the yellow bottle specifically, because this next company beat Mobil to the exact achievement Mobil is famous for. Amatuzio was a jet fighter squadron commander before he ever touched motor oil, working out of a garage in Superior, Wisconsin, trying to bring aviation-grade lubrication down to ordinary engines. In 1972, his company, Amsoil, became the first oil in the world to meet full API service requirements as a completely synthetic motor oil. Mobil 1 didn't reach American shelves nationally until 1976, 4 years later. Unlike almost everything else on this list, Amsoil still publishes its own side-by-side lab comparisons against the major names, batch numbers included, naming its competitors directly instead of asking you to just trust a label. It's priced close to Mobil 1. The catch is, you won't find it at a big box store. It's sold through dealers and direct accounts only, which is exactly why you've never once seen it on the same shelf as its biggest rival. That's the whole reason most guys never make the switch. Not the oil, the inconvenience. Being first to market was never the same as being first in your own engine bay. The next one takes us back before either World War. By now, this might feel like bad news, like every dollar you've spent on the familiar bottle was wasted. It wasn't. It just wasn't optimized, and that's a fixable problem. The last 3 names on this list are the easiest fix here because you already know every one of them. Number 3 takes us back to 1899, when Charles Wakefield walked out of his job at Vacuum Oil in London to start his own company. His chemists found that adding castor oil, an actual plant oil, let their formula hold up at extreme heat and cold better than anything else on the market. They named it Castrol, and by 1919 it was lubricating the engine of the first non-stop flight across the Atlantic. That heritage still has to prove itself today. Through the 20s and 30s, 18 of the 23 vehicles that broke the world land speed record ran on it, not as a sponsorship logo, but because nothing else survived those speeds. Castrol still supplies current Formula 1 grids, engines that would tear a weak oil apart in a single lap, which means the formula earns its badge every season, not just once in 1899. Edge Full Synthetic runs close to Mobil 1's price. Just know standard GTX is not the same animal as Edge, and paying Edge money for a GTX bottle is how you lose this whole argument. 100 years of racing never needed your attention to stay true. It just kept on showing up on the grid, decade after decade. Number 2 is older than the automobile itself. In 1866, a doctor named John Ellis was researching crude oil as a possible medicine in Pennsylvania when he found it made an excellent lubricant instead. He built the world's first trademarked motor oil brand around that accident, decades before Ford ever built a car for it to go into. It was the oil Ford recommended by name for the Model T, and it was formulated as an aircraft engine lubricant as early as 1910, before most engines on the road today had a design on paper. Here's why that history still matters and isn't just a plaque on a wall. Valvoline was the first major brand to roll out LSP protection, a defense against pre-ignition damage in modern turbocharged engines, across its entire lineup at once, ahead of Mobil and everyone else in that particular fight. It typically runs a few dollars cheaper per quart than Mobil 1's synthetic line, for a formula currently ahead of it on that exact protection. A brand doesn't survive 160 years by coasting on the first can it ever sold. It survives by still being the one a guy trusts blind, decade after decade, through every formula change and every fad that came and went around it. Some names were protecting engines before the automobile existed. That's not marketing. That's an oil that never stopped updating itself while the calendar kept moving. Number 1 takes us back further than anything else here. Before the Civil War, before the Model T, before there was any such thing as a gas station. In 1839, a German immigrant named Nicholas Schaeffer opened a small soap and candle shop in St. Louis. Wagon trains heading west for the gold rush greased their axles with his product. Steamboats on the Mississippi ran his oil in their engines. That company never sold to a conglomerate and never went public. 6 generations later, it's still family-owned, still in St. Louis, still sold through a direct sales force that answers to the customer, not a shelf display. Their own slogan says it outright: on your team, not on your payroll. With no national ad budget to fund, the formula is built primarily for fleets and trucking outfits who run engines 12 hours a day and can't afford to guess wrong. Bought direct, it often costs less per quart than a bottle with a Formula One logo stamped on it, tested daily by people whose entire livelihood depends on it not failing. A man who's bought from the same rep for 31 years, the same guy showing up every season until the day he sold the farm, still has that man's card in his wallet. That's not brand loyalty. That's what happens when a company never once gave him a reason to look anywhere else. You don't drive on the bottle. You never did. You drive on what's inside it, and on the people who never stop checking. None of this means Mobil 1 belongs in the trash. It was a genuine engineering leap in 1974, and it still protects an engine better than any conventional oil could. You didn't get a worse deal all these years because you have bad judgment. You got an average deal from a company that spent decades making sure you never looked at the shelf next to it. Here's what actually changed for you tonight. A mechanic changing your oil and a mechanic changing his own oil aren't always reaching for the same bottle, and now you know exactly why. You know the difference between a company that got there first and one that's actually earning it today. You know to check a certification and a base stock before you check a logo. Next oil change. Do one thing differently. Look one shelf over before your hand finds the familiar bottle. Read the back label instead of the front. It takes 10 extra seconds in the aisle. You are never paying for a brand's history. You are paying for whatever protects your engine at 3 in the morning on a cold start, mile after mile, long after anyone stopped watching. I check the donut, not the bottle. Now you know where to find it.